Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook?
Mate, we're going straight into it. Red light's rolling. We haven't even planned, mate.
No.
Do you know what? I've been listening to the High Performance podcast. Have you listened to that
Yes,
before?
Jake Humphreys.
And Damien, Professor Damien Hughes.
That's it, yeah. Brilliant, yeah, very good stuff.
Very good.
He's a great broadcaster, isn't he, Jake? I mean, I remember, for those of us who remember him pre-football, he was, of course, the Formula One guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. I got put back onto it because Matt Ballard posted the other day that he'd won this like 1-to-1 with the other chap, Damien.
Yeah.
And Matt is not very often forthcoming with his praise.
Yes.
And he was very forthcoming with his praise. So I was like, oh, I need to check this guy out again.
He was, yeah.
Mate, if you like, it's like tropical.
It is, isn't it? I don't know.
What have you done, mate?
I don't know. No,
I'll tell you what, listeners, Mike is trying to sweat me out of here.
Pete's going to have kittens now. I didn't touch that. That must have been on. Unless somebody put it on earlier for us.
To be fair, we've had a job interview in here this morning.
We did. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we had a job interview this morning.
It's not been on.
She was sweating as well. Sounds a bit wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, coming here for an interview, that might be the case. Yeah,
it was cold when she first came. Yeah, mate. So I tell you what, people won't have been used to us waffling on for a little bit, have they? We've had some special guests.
They're back in. Back in the room.
I think we've done 6 with James, and then an additional 3 of those, with Tom. And they've been very formal, haven't they?
They are very professional people. Weren't they fantastic guests, though? Really.
Fantastic, mate.
I mean, what content we got out of that was tremendous. I mean, so, big thanks to James and Tom for that, for their time. We actually saw them. They came down live. We had the pleasure of their company here. And I think they enjoyed it, and they were very complimentary about what we're doing here. So, it's good. All good stuff. So...
It's very exciting, mate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah. I was really pleased to be able to get them in and have a listen, and I hope the listeners, we've had some great feedback, and I think the listeners have got some real value from the insights. So, it's good. And obviously, we like to keep it as informal as we can where we can. And we thought we'd go back to a couple of less formal Mike and Pete
chats, and unplanned as they generally are, unscripted and unplanned. But I thought we'd perhaps recap on what we talked about in one of those podcasts we did with James and Tom, because since the podcasts were launched, we were talking about the guide to maintaining roadworthiness, and we were trying to sort of second guess what the changes were going to be. We've now had that. We've now seen the changes. We have. Did that surprise you how quickly that came out?
Yeah, it was almost like we spoke it up, wasn't it? It was incredible, really, how we were just chatting about it, and then it just, out of nowhere, it appeared.
Do you know what? I reckon somebody in the DVSA was sat there saying, God, Mike and Pete have been going on, we better get this out now. We've been sitting on this for 6 months. We better get it out the door.
Yeah, and I reckon it's all our fault. I reckon we lit a fire under them.
Yeah, blame us, folks. Yeah. So the key... We've since dissected, or we've had a chance to dissect what's in the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness, the new version, and I think it's pretty much as we talked about in the previous podcast with James and Tom. I think there was nothing too untoward there, was there? But anything catch your eye, Pete?
No, it was. I'm very blessed in that I've been able to have a skim through, and I've had a little bit of support along the way with people sort of giving me some guidance on what the big changes are. But obviously there's quite a big one around roller brake testing, which is a big one. Isn't
we kind of were expecting to see that, weren't we? But so I mean, if you're not doing loaded roller brake testing now, you've got to do it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. No two ways that's going to be a non-negotiable, isn't it?
Yeah,
2025 onwards is.
Yes, is the guidance, but I think really what the angle is, if you're not doing it, why not doing it? That's I think that's the message I got from it. But
and I imagine all like your Mahas and your Total Cares who manufacture roller brake tests. I'll tell you what, I'm in the wrong business. I should have
put their hands together.
I should have bought some shares, mate. Is what I should have done. I knew I should have invested in a roller brake tester company. Literally, I think price has gone through the roof. They're going to get rare as rocking horse shit as everyone orders them.
Absolutely, and any maintenance provider who hasn't got them, I'm sure will be making that orders now. And It's a good business opportunity for somebody. If you're going to invest a sum of money into a business, that's a good way of doing it.
Well, and it's a good, I do a few workshop audits and that kind of thing, and I think you've got to look at every cloud and all that, and look at the positives. And I've been speaking to a few sort of own account workshops because I go and do their auditing and stuff. I say, look, you've got an opportunity here to make a bit of money, because there's going to be lots of operators who use Fred in the shed, or I'm trying to think of something. Sam with a van. There we go. I just come up with that one.
Come up with that idea.
Sam in a van, and Fred in the shed, and there's going to be operators looking to do brake testing. And if you've got your own brake rollers, even if you're only account workshop, you can soon that can soon add up. Certainly back in my day at Volvo, we were charging 13 quid an axle. Oh, right, yeah. Yes. And I imagine that's in old money as well.
Yeah.
That's a good few years ago now. So I would have thought 15, 20 quid an axle.
Yeah.
And it's a chunk of change, isn't it? You get a 6-axle vehicle over,
that's
and you've got a couple $100 quid.
It's a few quid. And I mean, I'm going back even further than that in the days of, when I was involved with workshops, and anything you test invariably leads to business, doesn't it? It generates business, because it'll generate, if you've tested something and it's failed or it hasn't quite met the mark, it gives you an opportunity to upsell. Yeah. I haven't heard, what do you think about, we see it quite a lot on the Facebook pages and the social media pages, thoughts on sort of mobile fitters coming doing inspections. Where do you see, with your ER hat on and auditing?
That is
where do you see that?
That is a cheeky one there, Mike, for me not to have prepared.
That was a hospital pass, as they call them, isn't it? Yeah,
it stuck me on the spot.
Yeah.
There. The last time I got asked a question like that was on the Half Dozen Things podcast, where one of my guests said, "Pete, who are you?" And I was like,
"Hang on a minute,
you'll have to have a listen to the podcast for that one." But I think I've bought myself a little bit of time to have a think about it. Mate, mobile fitters, I think they serve a purpose, and that is probably to put it very friendly. Mate, I'm not a big fan.
No,
I'm not a big fan of mobile fitters, and I think they're a way of out of a hole, and I think there's a bit of a place for them. But I think it's got to be not your first choice.
No,
I think and like with anything, it does come down to the level of competence. Yeah. I'd take a very, very competent mobile fitter over an apprentice in a workshop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because obviously it does come
down to
the quality of the work.
Yeah,
and the quality of the work. But I think the whole thing about standards and having high standards and mobile fitters is that essentially they are literally Sam in a van. Like anything, if you were to start out doing a fitting business or a workshop type business, the way you're going to start out doing it, and I'm not saying they're all the same, because I'm sure they're not, but there's you've not got much guarantee or comeback or what have you. They haven't made the same level of investment that you're going to get from a good quality independent or main dealer workshop, and potentially not the same level of training. But that being said, there is the potential for all of that. So I would round back to every operator who is employing more than 5 people should have a very robust subcontractor policy where they vet their contractors and the people that they work with. Yeah. And I think, like you say, there may be mobile fitters out there who are much better equipped actually than some workshops. So certainly in the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness, which is guidance, it does say that a workshop needs to be large enough to fit fit vehicles in. I've not actually checked it for wording on mobile fitters in reality, but actually really they don't. It says what the workshop requirements are, and that is for them to be adequately lit, a roof or of a size big enough to fit the largest vehicle in the fleet. So they're making it very clear that there is an expectation.
There is an expectation, isn't there?
But possibly there are operators out there who have got their own space that could be used as a workshop by a mobile fitter. So I think it's horses for courses. And I think the main thing to focus on is having a really good quality subcontractor policy and procedure where you vet your contractors. So you measure their MOT first time pass rate, you gather information around what their minimum level of qualification is,
Absolutely.
what are their risk assessments, what are their policies and procedures, because one of the things that operators do need to understand is that if they have subcontractors coming onto their site to work, they have a duty of care for those subcontractors.
Yeah, true.
Particularly if they're self-employed men in vans. And actually, operators might decide that the extra 10, 15 quid an hour that they're saving on that technician who's coming in a van is very convenient. I understand it's convenient. It's probably less expensive. But potentially the level of risk they're exposed to.
They've just ramped their risk up, haven't they? Definitely.
Yeah,
I always,
so they're reducing their cost at a risk.
I always think workshops are dangerous places, and
they are
anything to do with if you've got vehicles jacked up and what have you, it is dangerous. But I know before we get shot down on social media, I know there are mobile brake testing kit available, but I've no idea, but I've got an imagination, and that would be more expensive probably than properly fitted brake testing
so
equipment.
in my experience, the mobile brake testing equipment, in my experience, has actually been less expensive because it's not been required to be properly fitted or dug out or what have you. But it does represent a challenge, and that is that I'm not sure, I'm not convinced, and I'm happy to be corrected, and I'm just speaking a bit off the cuff. But they're fairly hefty bits of kit. So when they say mobile brake testers, I think what they mean is that they're on dolly wheels. And you can move them around the yard if you need to move them around the yard. Not that they're very easy to put on a ramp and into the back of a van to then be transported around, because they're hefty bits of kit.
Poor old Sam the van has just been stopped by the DVSA for being overweight because he's got his brake testers in the back.
I'd be fascinated to find out what the weight is of a mobile brake tester, and are their vans big enough to hold them? Because once you've got all the, by nature they have to have ramps. Slightly differently to a properly fitted roller
lift them
brake
off the
tester
ground.
To get the vehicle where it needs to be, to sit in the rollers. So, excuse me, I think the mobile roller brake testers are far more for being moved around and put in place in a yard rather than transported from one location to another, because they're fairly hefty bits of kit. But I think the DVSA have got some stuff that they travel around with and what have you.
Hello, it's Shani from Flagship Partners. We are really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. If you need expert advice or training for your fleet business, make Flagship Partners your first choice. We are really excited to announce the launch of our Transport Manager Academy. With expert development for fleet leaders, we offer fully accredited initial Transport Manager CPC training, CPC refresher, and operator license awareness training, as well as mentoring, support, and professional development beyond the qualification. Our vision is to develop elite fleet professionals.
It's very hard to speak generally, and I'm probably digging myself a hole. People will dig me out for what I'm saying. But I do think erring on the side of caution, I think what's become very apparent in recent times is that I'm doing increasing amounts of workshop audits. It's something that I'm seeing more and more. And that's because the workshops are coming under increasing levels of scrutiny. Or maintenance providers are coming under increasing levels of scrutiny. And transport managers are being held to higher account as to how they select their subcontractors. So I think, as with anything, it comes with a health warning. I think whether your maintenance provider is in a workshop or mobile, you need to know not only what your MOT pass rate, but what their MOT pass rate is. And I think that people need to make sure that they've got risk assessments, they've got policies and procedures to ensure that they're satisfied that the people they're choosing to use and do the work for them are competent.
Bona fide, absolutely.
And have the insurance they need as
Insurances, absolutely. So it's not, it's a big investment anyway. Whichever way you do it, it's a big investment, isn't it, in workshops, as we know. But I'm quite rightly, and I think from a training point of view, without giving too many of our trade secrets away, from a training point of view, I'm starting to lean training courses more towards maintenance. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that driver's hours, for example, isn't as important as it's always been. However, I do feel that I think the course content is now erring more towards maintenance and understanding of maintenance issues, because I think that's where the DVSA's focus really is at the moment, or probably has been for some time. But so what else was in the guide? What else do we have in the guide to maintain roadworthiness?
That's a good question, Mike. And actually, I'll let you have a think about that whilst I just pick up on what you've just said, which is, I think that when it comes to managing your operation, you've got the considerations of the roadworthiness and then also of the management of the driver. And obviously we have things like driver CPC, we have tachograph analysis. They're upgrading the standard of the tachographs. And largely speaking, I think that there are lots of easy management systems in place. And actually, roadworthiness is a big challenge and a big expense as well. Yeah. It's a big expense, which I think is very much the thin end of the wedge. And the DVSA are acutely aware that there's probably plenty of operators out there that are operating out of MOT, unsafe for the road. There's obviously clearly a big complex part of an operation is to manage roadworthiness and defects.
It is, yeah. And in fairness, it's probably not as understood as it should be. I think that's the competency out there is probably slightly lacking in that area.
Yeah, and that's only getting worse, isn't it? Because the vehicles are getting more complex, and I think there's good quality people who are retiring out of the sector, and it's not a particularly desirable job for the younger generation.
Big shortage of fitters, absolutely big shortage of fitters. I happen to be. I went to deliver. Not nothing to do with transport actually. I went to deliver. I had a great time, to be fair, Pete, and thanks obviously go to Flagship for sort of sponsoring this really. But I had a great time delivering a presentation skills workshop to a load of second year business studies students at Wellingborough. I would say Wellingborough Tech, but of course it's not called that anymore. It's called something Tresham Institute of whatever it is. But I went there. That's where I studied. That's where I did when I was learning to be a mechanic. And I asked some of the guys there, what's it like? There's just not a take up, and people who start courses very rarely finish them, and it's that's the future really for us, is going to be struggling to get the people in those positions in workshops to do that sort of work, but.
Tricky, mate, tricky. So what else was there?
I put myself on the spot there because I can't think of the name for it.
One of them was a sign-off sheet, wasn't it?
Yes.
Making sure that the services were signed off as roadworthy.
Yeah, that's definitely something we go through on our training courses. To make sure that transport managers, people in the transport office, when they get a service sheet back, when they get an inspection sheet back from the maintenance provider, that it's correctly completed and signed off. I think that's the important thing, isn't it?
I think I think it's a fairly chunky document, but I would suggest to people to read it a section at a time and familiarise themselves with it. But it does have its limitations, and one of the things we were discussing earlier is I did a workshop audit the other day, and the workshop technicians, now in section 5.2, which relates to tyres and tyre management, I think point 8, because I've emailed the DVSA on it recently, I think point 7 or 8 on there is about the service inspection monitoring tyre pressure and wear and what have you. I haven't got the document in front of me exactly what it was, but this workshop were keen to not remove dust caps and put a tyre pressure gauge on the tyres because it resulted in longer term puncturing or loss of air or dust getting in, etc., which I found very interesting. And the health and safety person who looked after the fleet said to me, well, what's the right thing to do? And I've sent it on to the DVSA because in reality the wording says that the guidance is that tyre pressures will be monitored. Now that workshop are arguing that they are monitoring the tyre pressures by having a visual look at them and hitting them with a hammer or giving them a kick or whatever it is they're doing, and they can see that the tyres are
okay.
The tyres are okay. Now, in my book, that is not monitoring them, but that's my book. So, and obviously they do have tyre pressure gauges. So what's the point in having them
if you're not going to?
If you're not going to take them. And what I must say is, I've been witness to roadside stops where a 20-30 psi down tyre has resulted in a PG9.
Absolutely. Inflation's it is interesting sometimes the wording of how that goes around. I mean,
but there's nothing there to back me up.
Nothing there to back you up. No, you can't. And a lot of that we find with legislation, and of course the guidance goes deeper than the legislation. somebody I was talking to somebody in the legal profession about this the other day, and they said guidance is used to amplify legislation. So they use the guidance to make the legislation more palatable, more readable. But sometimes it just stops short, doesn't it, of what we really need to do, what they really expect us to do.
Absolutely. I think, guidance is well and good. And I thoroughly recommend that everyone reads the GTMR, or the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness, themselves. Certainly as, we'll all become more familiar with it. And I suggest that some of the things, certainly that's very familiar, a lot of the things that we've discussed previously are there coming up. So please do look at the back catalogue of our podcast and have a look at that. And there's been a wealth of people posting about it online as well.
Social media kind of blew up, didn't it? Yeah. Have you seen this?
I do.
Oh, really? No.
It does make me chuckle where people just share a link and then believe that's content.
Yeah.
But
that nobody else has sort of discovered that the fact that the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness has been updated.
Yeah, absolutely. But do drop your comments. What have you found? What's been most interesting in the new update? And let us know what you think. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Catch you in a bit.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.